Hello class, hope you had a good Labor Day weekend. Before we meet tomorrow, I wanted to walk you through the prompt for our essay assignment. The first part of the work is due this week, an introduction and a works cited page for your essay. And then the discussion topic for this week is to share your thesis ideas or share ideas about your topic in the discussion on tomorrow, starting tomorrow. So I thought we'd look at the prompt together and I'd talk you through it. And then I thought I would go and look at some of the resources for citing sources in the library LibGuides. Okay, so let me begin by going to the homepage for our course. Sorry about the server outage last week, but I've updated the due dates for assignments. So the Monday feedback for last week is due, or for this week is due today. And then last week's homework and discussion are actually due tomorrow. I extended it. And then this week's discussion is due on Thursday. Again, that is just an opportunity for you to share thoughts about the essay. And then the homework is due on Saturday instead of Friday. So again, that's an introduction and a works cited page for the essay. Okay, let me just go to the discussion and we can look at that together. So what's your topic? What are you thinking of writing about? Describe what you're planning. It's okay if you change your mind. Give some context and explain how you plan to use the texts. Okay, so how does your topic relate specifically to what we're reading? What's the context for your topic? What's the central question that you're addressing or the central problem that you're trying to work through? How do you plan to answer that question or approach that problem? Then think about your thesis. That's your central claim. What's the central claim that you want to make in this essay? And how do you plan to defend that thesis? Try to say something about that. Be as detailed as you can. And then what do you need between now and October 9th when the final draft is due? What do you need to figure out or know more about to write this essay? And specifically before you start writing this essay this week, what do you need to know more about it? What do you need to read? What do you need to think about? And then lastly, what are some questions that you have about your topic or about writing in general? Okay, those are things you can share in the discussion forum for this week, and that's due on Thursday, not tomorrow, but Thursday. You can find the essay topic here in weekly content in week 4. We have the essay prompt. So I've just worked through the discussion topic. The essay prompt, you click here. It's also in the assignment. If you go to assessment and the assignment folder, you can find an attachment in the assignment folder. Okay, but here we'll just look at this one. That's not helpful. Sorry, forget that. Okay, I'll make it bigger. So you're going to choose one topic. I've given you a bunch to think about. The last topic is actually come up with your own topic. Okay, but the other 6, if you don't want to come up with your own topic, you're going to choose one of the other 6 and write a 5-page response. Now, each prompt contains many different but related questions. I don't want you to think of yourself as having to answer every single question, certainly not in that order, right? But the questions within the prompt are meant to get you thinking about your topic and focusing on your central question and focusing on your thesis statement. So all of the questions there are meant to get you kind of focusing, but you don't have to answer all of them. The thesis is the answer to the central question in your essay, or the central argument that you're going to develop throughout the whole essay. And that should appear in the introduction, right? The introductory paragraph that you're writing for this week should contain a statement of your thesis or the central argument that you're going to trace through the paper as a whole, okay? Some other things, just formatting. This is something you're going to submit digitally through Turnitin, which will give me a chance to write comments and also assess your sources and make sure that you used sources properly. But when you're submitting the document, make sure it's double spaced, makes it easier for me to comment, and type it in a normal 12-point font. So the 5 pages, I'll give you a word count. Actually, that would be more useful than the pages, but I'll give you a word count. But the 12-point font, double spaced, 5 pages of that approximately. It should be written in the form of an argument. Okay, I want to hear from you, like your reflection on what you're reading, your experience with what you're reading, how you bring that to bear on other things that you know. But I also want you to make an argument, right? That's the purpose of the paper. Focus on structure. Okay, make sure you've got an introduction with a thesis statement, body paragraphs that support the thesis, and a concluding paragraph that draws a conclusion. Think of the conclusion as something that extends the thesis, not just a repetition of the thesis, but here's what I've argued. Okay, what follows from that? What are the implications? Okay, make sure that whatever you argue, that you base your argument on evidence from the text. You can also use outside sources or do some research of your own, but the main evidence for your argument should be the text of Gilgamesh or the text of Genesis. Okay. So with that in mind, you'll need a works cited page with the bibliographical information about the text that you're reading and citing, but also in-text citations to specific passages from the relevant texts, okay? Gilgamesh and Genesis. All right, so like I said, we're starting with pieces. This week, the introduction and works cited page. Next week, a more complete draft, and then the final version is due in October. Okay, here's the word count, 1,250 words. It doesn't matter which format you use for citations as long as it's consistent, and we'll look at the citation guide in D2L. That's in the useful links module. We'll look at that together. And then here are the due dates. I've changed this one to Saturday because of the server outage, but the other due dates remain the same. Okay, let's look at some of the topics, and then I'll pause and we'll do another video where we talk about citations and essay structure. But this one, I just want to go through the topics together. So here's the first one. Think about the theme of boundaries and curses. There are many boundaries that are maintained in Gilgamesh and in Genesis. Those boundaries are important. Sometimes when they get crossed, we see the gods or Yahweh in Genesis cursing. So the curses play an important role in relationship to the boundaries. Okay, we didn't really talk about Tablet 6 when Gilgamesh kind of crosses a boundary with Ishtar. She doesn't bring down a curse, but she more or less curses him. And she goes to her father and asks him for his help in destroying Gilgamesh. That's one boundary we didn't talk about. What we saw, for example, the boundary of the forest and the city, right? The crossing over from the city into the forest. That's a crossing of a boundary. Okay, so what are the important boundaries in Gilgamesh? How are they preserved? Why are they preserved? What happens when they're crossed? How does this compare to the boundaries that Yahweh or God seems intent on preserving in Genesis? You could compare them. What is the role of curses in both of these texts? Who gets cursed and why? And what is, in your view, the basic relationship between curses and boundaries? Okay, what does that tell? And then the larger question here, say something about what that tells us about these cultures and what they valued. Okay, so again, this is giving you a topic. You need to focus what question you want to be the central one. Okay, the second topic is about immortality and death. Some have argued that Gilgamesh is the epic of immortality, or the epic of the fear of death. That's really what it's about, our fear of death and our desire not to die, to live forever. Well, that's a big part of this story, okay? So how is death represented in the poem? How is immortality represented? Enkidu dies, and then we see a Gilgamesh wandering with matted hair, clad in a skin. Why does he have to do that? What's he really seeking? He's seeking immortality, but what is he really seeking? How does he understand his quest? How do we understand his quest? How do we see it? He goes to the edge of the world. What does he find there? What's he really looking for? Does he transform himself? Is he transformed by his journey? If so, how? Mitchell is the one. If you're reading his introduction online, he argues that this is an epic about the fear of death. Well, is that true? What does that mean? How are we supposed to understand that? And here, like, what would it mean to overcome the fear of death? Would overcoming the fear of death transform the way we live? Well, how? Give some concrete examples of what that would look like. Does Gilgamesh overcome his fear? What are we left with at the end of the poem? He comes home with Ushanabi, the boat keeper. He's bringing something home to his people, a story. He's going to write it down on tablets and share his story. What is he bringing home to his people? What is the wisdom that Gilgamesh returns with? And what does it have to do with our fear of death and our quest for immortality? Okay, that's the second topic. Again, you don't have to answer all the questions. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to let you work through the rest. One is about friendship and love and becoming human. You've already written a homework piece on that topic, so you could develop one of your homework assignments into a longer essay. Topic 4 asks you to look at similarities and contrasts of the flood story in Gilgamesh in Genesis. Okay, I've also given you Atrahasis. That's an online text. That's the fuller story of the flood from ancient Mesopotamia. Atrahasis is another name for Utnapishtim. His name is Utnapishtim in Gilgamesh. His name is Noah in Genesis. That is in a different language, Sumerian. His name is Atrahasis. Utnapishtim is the Akkadian name. Okay, so here there's some questions about the flood stories. Here's question 5 is about origin myths, okay, and how they're used, right, and what function they play for a people. Why do you think that these people chose to focus on the story of Gilgamesh as part of their origin myth? And then 6, I give you an option of reading Stephen Mitchell's introduction or reading some essays by a guy named Keith Dixon that are available on D2L. So in the next video, I'll show you those essays, how to find them. But the assignment here would be to read one of those essays, or more than one, and develop a critical analysis of the argument that Dixon or Mitchell is making. And then sort of drawing a conclusion of your own. Like, what's Dixon arguing here? What's interesting about it? What conclusion would you draw? Or what's the argument that Mitchell is making here in his introduction? And what conclusions would you draw from it? You know, where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Okay, so that's topic 6, and then 7 is to come up with your own topic. Okay, I'm going to pause and come back. We'll look at where to find the Dixon articles, and then we'll talk about citing sources and look at the guide to citing sources. And also, I shared with you last week a Google Doc with like essay structure, and so we'll look at that, sort of the bare bones of how to structure your essay. Okay, thanks.